warm welcome to you. My name is Joseph Hui. I am a professor at the Department of Real Estate, Deputy Director of the Institute of Real Estate and Urban Studies, Program Director of the Executive Certificate in Real Estate Finance, and Vice Dean of the School of Academics at the School of Design and Environment in NUS. This webinar series aims to provide a platform for NUS Real Estate alumni who are experienced and very well regarded in the industries. They are leaders, veterans, to share their experience with our students, our alumni, industry partners, government, official, and publics. In addition to developing the thought leadership and exploring possible urban solutions, there are also two other objectives why we organize this seminar series. One is primarily for our current NUS Real Estate students, hence the title of the series is Nurturing Young Leaders. This webinar series is an important part of our effort in nurturing young leaders, connecting them with the industry, and mentors and exposing them to the real world challenges. And the webinar also provide an important platform for us to spark new ideas and critically assess the constraint facing the real estate industry and the current pandemic. So of course, today's session is focused on e-commerce and logistics. In the current crisis, some sectors are more affected than others. All right, and in fact, most sectors are badly affected by this COVID-19 pandemic, but there are a few bright spots. Some areas are less adversely affected, and logistics would be one of them. E-commerce and logistics would be one of the areas whereby it is less adversely affected. So for this afternoon session, we are very, very pleased to have three of our distinguished NUS Real Estate alumni to be on the panel for today's webinar sessions. So the panelists are Danny Yeo, Executive Chairman, Knight Frank, Singapore. Then Dennis Yeo, okay, from Cushman and Wakefield. All right, Dennis, and then Donna Han. Donna Han is from Savannah REIT. Danny Yeo is the Executive Chairman of Knight Frank, Singapore. Having spent his entire career in real estate sector, I can say that for all the three of them, they spent their entire career in real estate sector. Danny is a well-respected industry players and often quoted by local media. Throughout his career, he has clinched and developed numerous multi-million-dollar projects across the government and private sector in both local and international markets. Some of the prominent projects include Gardens by the Bay, Singapore Sports Hub, Plaza Sing, Takashimaya, Marina Square, Hanoi, Tran Tien Plaza, Hyatt Perth, and many others. All right. His experience covers the breadth of the whole commercial and real estate services. He's a firm advocate of innovation. In his last 40 years, the bulk of his career was spent with Knight Frank. He joined in 1990, I think, as the head of investment sales. Then he also helped concurrently as appointed at one stage executive director of retail, and concurrently as executive director of agency doing retail, industry, and offices. He was appointed as the Deputy Group MD in 2007 and the Group MD in 2017. Since 2019, he's now the Executive Chairman of Knight Frank. Prior to joining Knight Frank, Danny was also working. He graduated, I think, in 1980. His first assignment was with HDB. He gained experience in the sales and management of HDB flat. And then from 81 to 84, he was with Richard Ellis, now of course known as CBRE, handling sales and leasing of retail, office, and industrial units. And then from 84 to 89, he set up his own real estate agency, Yeo Out and Lim Valuers. All right. So Danny, of course, graduated with a degree in estate management from University of NUS in 1980. obtained a Master of Science in Property and Maintenance Management in 1990. So Danny, the floor is yours. 10 minutes to share your views.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah.
Okay, in today's session, I am going to concentrate a little bit more on the e-commerce, particularly on the retail sector. So I just jump in straight into it. The first area is how did this COVID-19 impact and definitely surface all the weaknesses in this sector. I mean, we all know that the pre-internet days, it's very easy to start a business. You just get a physical premises, and then you just get your products and you sell. Then, of course, with internet as well as the technology even before the COVID-19, there has been a lot of changes to it, and a lot of people are making changes. But this COVID-19 has really shown a lot of conflict between physical nature, use of physical premises, as well as the way businesses are being done. Because by the very basic retail and shopping, you need critical mass of shoppers coming around, and of course with social distancing and even limitation of how many people can get into a shopping mall or into the shop, it does create a lot of challenges to retailers. So particularly for restaurants don't operate whole day. They operate only lunch and dinner. And during those times, that is a time where they make the most money, but they also need a lot of people to come in. So it is really limiting everyone, limiting the crowd to go in. It cripples a lot of spendings, obviously, on the bottom lines of retailers. So this particular pandemic definitely has created a lot of issues, big as well as small operators, and particularly small operators. I'm sure you have read in the news that there were a lot of big operators in the US. These are very internationally fall up because of businesses not being able to sustain. So many of these retailers, for competitions, they need to grow very fast. They are being stretched in many ways in their operations. Their margins are very thin, cash flow problems. All this has definitely shown a lot of issues on how they do businesses. Now, of course, from the retailers as well as more operators, there are also challenges that comes in it, because the developers depends on retailers. The retailers depend on customers. If the customers don't come in, retailers are not able to do their business. If the retailer are not able to do their business, the developer cannot make their money and they are not able to sustain. So that is a chain effect throughout. And obviously the main factor that have been shown during this COVID-19 is that whether you're a retailer or you are a developer, if you are not, or you're poor in applying digital platform, you are grossly and greatly disadvantaged. So it's very clear cut in the last few months. When you stay home, you order your food, you order your grocery. Any one of those who doesn't have that digital platform, they are being left behind. So that one is a very clear cut thing. And of course, there are enough statistics to show that during these few months, that the adoption of e-commerce, using of online shoppings has grown a lot. So definitely, if they do not have that platform, they are being stressed out. It also surfaced another area where landlord-tenant relationship has very much been stressed. And actually, this has been going on for a long time, but during this period, operators are not able to operate. The government stepped in. They have to tell the developers to say that, look, you can't just terminate the contract. You allow them some grace period to operate. So all these are very obvious signs that things are not as healthy as it ought to be. Now let me just go to the next one quickly on the threat to the whole business. Human beings are very much, we are very physical and sensory beings. We always need space. We also need gathering. We want to congregate and interact. Will we all live at home throughout and then don't interact and just you go on online shopping? I don't think it is. So digitalization of business operation is glaringly evidenced and being exposed by this COVID-19. So for more owners and retailers, as I say, those who did not really embrace digital futures, they all suffer a lot, right? And obviously, when you depend on digital platform to do your business, the offline, that means the physical stores, the business will definitely drop in its taking. It also caused retailers to start thinking to say, do I really need such a big space? What do I do with the space? Can I terminate my space? Can I reduce my space? And all these things will create challenges for developers. So it's a very big threat once things are open. And the worst thing is, if you're not going to see the vaccines coming through, whether we are in phase 2, phase 3, we are probably going to live with this new normal where we got to stay away from each other at a certain distance. The malls are not going to be able to operate as per normal. And everybody will also be very conscious and cautious of going out, mixing around. And all these will create a lot of issues. Now, the other side of the threat is definitely supply chain. I mean, as a retailer, unless your product is very, very narrow, if you have got a very wide range of product diversities of supply chain is very important. You can't operate in the retail operations without constant and regular supplies of your products. And very often middlemen get cut out unless the middlemen are all ready for e-commerce that is being adopted by everybody. There are a lot of people buying directly from suppliers. It's quite obvious, right? And on the other aspect of it, when we get out of this, what do we expect? So unless staff are properly trained and are really being trained to provide good service, customers and consumers will be asking, why do I need to go to the stores, right? Nowadays, I will be able to start using more online shopping. So unfortunately, the nature of our market, the staff turnover, very often a lot of staff on the ground are not quite well trained, and our service level is actually quite lacking. So this is one area that will definitely create a threat unless retailers as well as employees are able to up their service to do this area of work. I think that will be a challenge. Now, then what exactly it is that will happen? I think the other threat is, of course, if you talk about our shopping centers, you have got shopping centers that are in downtown, you got shopping centers in tourist area in Orchard Road, you have got shopping center in suburban location. But if the new normal is such that many people are going to work from home, then what will happen to a lot of retail shops that are in town that are operating next to office building? Would there be excess capacity coming up? So what about those in the suburban location? I think those malls that are not quite close to transportation hub, they are not too big, they're medium size, small size, and their retail offerings are not big enough or not wide enough, the choice is not enough. I think most of these will probably be facing very great challenges ahead of them. And developer will have to reconsider what are they going to do with it, right? So obviously, for retailer side of it, everybody has got to consider seriously how do you balance between online and offline shopping, because you cannot do without. There would be some who will just go purely on online, but I still believe that offline, that means in-store shopping, will still be needed for a lot of experiential reasons, right? So higher cost operations, of course, is a very major factor right now. And so more owners, retailers as well as more owners will probably have to look at downsizing in many ways. What are the opportunities in these situations that has been presented? Obviously, the essential services, those people who are in the retailers who are dealing with essential goods and services will probably be in much better shape compared to those retailers who are selling discretionary products, right? So greater adoption of digitalization and tech is very obvious, have got to continue, and there is a great opportunities for people in that sector of it. And of course, cost operation is one major issue. So why would the retailers want to pay $20, $30 per square foot and stay in a mall? And if they are able to balance themselves, if they are able to adopt off and online, would they be able to find alternatives that are much cheaper? So I see the opportunity that perhaps retail warehouse concept could be one area that could be introduced widely, because right now our planning guidelines don't quite give us much of this option to go for retail warehouse. And if you have got that, your operating costs will be much lower. You occupy spaces that are much cheaper. And if you can say use 60% of the space for your storage and the other 40% for your office as well as your product display, and you can allow customers to come in and browse through, and you order, and then then the retailers will just send it to them. They don't need to bring home. So these sectors does allow other opportunities to come out. The developers will also need to start looking at AIs, looking at layout planning. I'm also wondering whether shopping malls that has got very narrow corridor, very, very high percentage of net lettable area versus the GFA, will they be able to continue the way it is? Because everybody is going to be very difficult to have this social distancing. So will the planner look into this to allow like what we had in the older days, where you have your NLA as your planning guideline, and then the corridor space will be required, but the way it is being defined will be relooked into, so that a lot of malls, or all the malls, can have wider corridor, so that spaces are better spread out. In the other area of it, I think a lot of retailer will probably, particularly those who are bigger and has got the capacity to got money behind them to build. I think only channels platform in operation will probably be definitely much better use, because this is something quite new in the market in the last 6-7 years. But has it been very fully implemented? I don't think so, because there are a lot of complexity. And at the end of the day, obviously in this e-commerce and in retail business, customers' requirement, customers' needs, and customers' want is very obvious. I think it's quite obvious that if you were to look into any online shopping, just say you go to a grocery store in Singapore, you may just probably get 20-30% of the products that are online. If you go to the physical store, you get the rest of it. So people are also very, very impatient. When I order, sometimes you got to rush inside the book a date that you get your product only 1 week or 3-4 days. People want the product to be on the same day. The worst is just the next day. So all these things, unless you have got a channel platform that allows you to go online, offline, and you make sure you take care of your customers' needs and wants, and know customers' requirement and behavior, you're not going to keep the customer unless you have got something that customers can't help it, but really only to go to you. But in this competitive market, it's not going to happen that way. Now, so retail consulting specialists, which is on the other side of the coin, I think everyone will definitely need to know much more than what we all know today. We need to know about customers' behavior. We need to know about analytics. We need to know a lot more about consumer behaviors and retail operations. So there's a whole lot of things. I believe that there will be great demand for this area of specialists who are in retail side. However, what kind of qualities advice are we able to provide? I think that will mean a lot to the customers who are asking for our service. Now, so obviously the using of the tech platform to showcase products, live streamings, virtual platforms, a lot of apps for more management tool. All this area will definitely be the area where everybody will be chasing after. And let me just conclude by talking about the what new skill side. I think for the real estate advisory services, as I mentioned just now, consumer behavior, data analytics, marketing tools, everything relating to this, we have got to understand, because in real estate, we always say location, location, location. But in retail, we always say customer, customer, customer. If you know what your customer, you can serve the customer, you can pre-plan for a lot of things. So more layout, design, focus, and if there is an opportunity for the student to learn more about this area of it, I think that will be helpful. Technology application, and of course, more of the futures will be seamless transition, offline, online, offline, and I'm also wondering how much can we use, have alternative use of commercial real estates for flexible switching between use of retail sales, product, as well as for other related trade use. So that one will be something that I would say need to take a good look at it. So obviously there will be a lot of work to be done after the COVID-19. It's not going to be the same, and more management operations and everything is not going to be the same. So retailer as well as developer will have got to do a lot of rethink and how to serve the customer. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Danny, for your insightful comments. Now, the next speaker I wanted to introduce is Dennis Yeo, who is the head of Investor Services APAC from Cushman & Wakefield. Dennis Yeo, his responsibility include growing Cushman & Wakefield's client relationship and extending to them the full suite of best-in-class property services. This appointment relied on Danny's years of experience in the property market across Asia Pacific. Prior to leading the investor services for APAC, Dennis was the CEO for Singapore and Southeast Asia. Dennis brings a highly valuable combination of professional expertise and leadership experience to the firm. He has close to 3 decades of experience in handling corporate real estate transactions, acting for multi-MNCs company clients, funds, and institutions. His professional expertise is in industrial and logistics around the region, including Greater Asia. So over the years, he has built an impressive network of clients who look to him and his team for real estate advice. His 3-year tenure as MD, Industrial and Logistics Asia at CBRE, has boasted his expertise in the growth sector. During his tenure at CBRE as MD of Asia Industry and Logistics, Dennis has led the business to unprecedented record of performance in the market. Dennis was MD for Colliers Singapore for 22 years prior to joining CBRE. So apart from holding leadership responsibility in the firm, Dennis was an exco for Colliers Asia management team and managed the firm's China business between 2008 and 2010. So Dennis, please, you.
My name is pretty similar to the eminent speaker before me, Danny Yeo. But I want to tell everyone that the closest I get to have a relationship with him was that he was my boss in my first job. Great man, Danny. Thanks for everything. Thanks for taking me in when I freshly graduated in 1988. This is my pet topic because I've worked many years literally in logistics and industrial, and this one is very, very close to my heart and my passion. So logistics, I think, as Danny had mentioned earlier, it's widely been acknowledged to have performed best amongst the various property types, and especially through the pandemic, right? So as a result, you see more and more funds being set up. You see more and more funds that are already set up, basically gravitating to that sector. Okay, and as a result, yield has been compressed because there's more demand than supply. The reason why logistics sectors are performing well during this difficult period, right? E-commerce, of course. In the past, it is from warehouse to shops, and then the shop sells the goods and products, right? So you imagine from a warehouse that came in, all the imports of goods stored in the warehouse, and then the warehouse distribute to hundreds of shops, okay? But now it's different, right? If you order from e-commerce, why does the product even need to go to the shop? So directly, it forms a logistic chain from the warehouse directly to the consumer. So you take away the shop, but what that happens is that you require more storage space, right? Just like every shop needs some inventory, just-in-time inventory, if you like. But if the shops are reduced, there's very little interface with the shop. Consumers now buy online rather than go to the shop and buy over the counter. You actually have less shops and less storage space at the shop, which means that your product have to be stored in a warehouse. Singapore is relatively simple because Singapore is quite small, but can you imagine in the US, in the large markets, you literally need to have, literally need to design your supply chain, your logistics to the extent that you have huge warehouses to the tune of 1 million square feet maybe, and then down to the sub-regional warehouses, and then down to your last mile. Okay, so these are some of the complications with logistics and how eventually you will hear later from me that eventually we are talking about omni-channel real estate. We're no longer talking about retail real estate, no longer talking about warehouse real estate, but we have this new category, what we call omni real estate, right? Omni-channel real estate, meaning that you literally combine the two real estate type that we traditionally know them to be, right? So really the growth of e-commerce during the pandemic, right, has led to the resilience of the logistics sector. So when I say about the logistics sector, it means this will include, of course, warehousing, which is the storage, and then the transportation. Okay, let's go to say that, okay, is there any weakness, in this real estate, and what are the weakness that's being exposed by the pandemic? I think the fundamental principle, okay, it still remains, okay. Real estate is actually a derived demand. So if there's no demand for services, there's no demand for goods, then there's no demand for real estate. Okay, so this pandemic have shown, and I think Danny have earlier mentioned, that people are locked down, they can't go to the malls, and then, so they can't shop, right? They can't shop over the counter, but they can shop online. Okay. Then you have things like agreements, right? Singapore, our agreements are signed on the 3-year basis, 2-year basis with option to renew. And all of a sudden, people are not coming to work, they're locked down. All of a sudden they get used to that. But that will be more for the office, right? And also to a certain extent, retail shops where you actually have retail, you actually have shops, but your shops are locked into a 3-year lease, but you have no customers, right? Which is why the government is spending quite a bit of money supporting the shops, supporting the businesses so that they can get across this lull period, if you like, of over-the-counter sales, over retail sales in the shop. But for warehouse, it's a slightly different situation, right? I asked the landlords, of some of these warehouses, and some of them are REITs and all that. Does it mean that your income from rentals actually dropped? They say no, it has held up quite well. Well, the reason being that their customers have got their products in their warehouse, right? So it's very difficult for them to stop paying rent because business is no good and all that. And in any case, if they were in e-commerce, if their products are basically servicing the e-commerce, the online sales, they're probably doing quite well. Okay, so this is what I mean that, for this pandemic, actually, like I mentioned in my first statement, that, logistics sector, warehousing has really been doing quite well. Okay, so but does that mean that there will be further growth in this sector? Yes, there will be further growth in this sector. There may be a period where there will be a bit of slippage because companies have closed down. Okay, retail companies have closed down, retailers have closed down, and they're no longer in existence, right? But if you then look at logistics. Logistics is not that simple. You know, it's very simple for us because we, as a consumer, we go onto the internet. You know, we like this stuff, we buy, we wait a few days, it appears in our door, someone ring our doorbell, and then someone pick it up, right? And we pick it up. But logistics and retail service, online retail service, have gone to the extent that we have to handle reverse logistics. Okay, some people ask me, what's reverse logistics? Reverse logistics is really like that. You buy an item, but I give you an option, because if you buy an item online, the size may not fit you, the color may not be exactly what it looks like when you order. And some retailers are going to the extent where they say, it's okay. You buy one, I give you 5. You pick one, and then you return the other 4. Okay, and then there's this money back guarantee stuff. There's, if you don't like it, you can just return it, and then they'll refund you the money. What do you do with those products? Those products, when it comes back, has to go somewhere, right? Those products have, when they come back, then have to go into warehouse space. You're not going to put them in the most expensive real estate. You're not going to put them in the shop. Neither are you going to put them in an office, because these are traditionally very expensive, relatively more expensive real estate compared to warehouse. So eventually, whoop, back it goes to the warehouse, right? Then there are other things going there, going further, meaning that will they then be sold as second hand? Will they then go back to the original inventory and all that? So from there, you actually can see that it's getting a lot more complicated, and which is why it is good opportunity for us as well, right? Opportunity in academic study, opportunity in training. We got to try to learn all these new skills to prepare ourselves for the change in the market. Okay, but I'll touch on that later when I come to it. Okay, then we look at what are the potential threat of and digital disruption to real estate, right? The threat is actually very simple. I think Danny have touched on that earlier, right? If you do not keep up with technology and trends, you will be shipped out. Okay, you will be shipped out, right? Many examples. Okay, JCPenney has collapsed. Forever 21 has collapsed. Okay, that's really because they can't catch up, you know, with newcomers. Maybe they can't catch up with eBay, I don't know, Amazon and all that, where they pay very little rents for expensive real estate like shops and all that, and they are able to generate their sales globally to the extent, right? Because internet is World Wide Web, right? www is World Wide Web, you know, everybody can access, right? And if they have tackled the delivery, the supply chain, you know, the world is really their market. Okay, so that's a sad story, of course, you know, but I want to touch on a good story, and this happens really in Singapore. I think some of you would identify with this brand, Baker's Inn, right? You guys have probably heard of Baker's Inn. They were pretty good. I mean, in fact, very good and expensive, relatively expensive cake shops, right? Pastries and cake shops are very famous for their cheesecake. Okay, but you don't see them now, right? Probably there's a shop, someone told me there's a shop at the United Square, but you really don't see them across the island anymore, right? There's probably a couple of shops and that's it. But in the past, there's so many shops, you know, in Bakers, probably in high-end, even high-end shopping center, relatively good shopping centers, you have Bakers Inn. Bakers Inn has, what happened is that Daniel Tay, who is the person behind Bakers Inn, decided, I think this would be about 6 years ago, decided that he's going to sell the business, Bakers Inn business, you know, take the money and start a cheesecake shop. Okay, but shop in the sense that it is not a retail shop, it is a food factory that he rented, 20,000 square feet with ovens to bake his cake. Well, I don't know, someone told me not all cheesecake needs to be baked. Okay, that's what I also learned. Okay, so if you then go to this website known as Cat and the Fiddle, you will see all the cakes that Daniel Tay sells is actually online. It's a very, very convenient online cake shop. And if you compare that, compare this with what we used to do in the past. In the past, when we have someone's birthday, if we know a cake shop, we call the cake shop and say, I need a cake about this size, how much is it, blah, 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 and I want this whole wording. I'll pick it up tomorrow, the day after, and all that kind of thing. Or sometimes, in most cases, we literally have to go to the cake shop and order the cake, right? But not for Cat and the Fiddle. Cat and the Fiddle, you go onto the online shop, you choose the cake, they tell you the price, and then when you check out, you pick the cake, you check out, and then you start to say, you say that I need it tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. You know, I want to buy 6 more candles, or how many candles you want, what sort of wordings you want on the cake. You know, they can all do that online, and they will deliver on time. Okay, you want a spot on deliver, you deliver within this half an hour slot, you pay a bit more. Right? You don't really care what time it comes, as long as it's tomorrow afternoon or so, you pay cheaper, right? If in fact, before he even got to now where he is now, Daniel owns a few more shops then, so he allows various form of collection for the cake. He can deliver to you for a charge. You can go and pick up from the shop, you know, probably no charge. Or maybe from the shop, because they have to bring from the factory, you maybe pay $2 or whatever to pick up from the shop. Or you can go to the factory and you pay nothing to pick up the cake, right? So, and this happened 6 years ago. This is where, you know, where I said that, you know, if you do not keep up, you know, you probably be right behind. And by the time you are there, you can no longer catch up. Okay, another story maybe I share with you is that Amazon, right? Amazon Prime. How would Amazon Prime, that is very close to you, they promise a 2-hour delivery, 1-hour delivery, even in the US, know what to store? Because that warehouse is not your 1 million square feet warehouse, right? It's probably a 10,000 square feet warehouse that is at your neighborhood, you know, so that they can deliver within an hour, within 2 hours. They base on data analytics. Right, they base on data analytics. They understand the demographics of the population around there where they can serve, deliver within an hour and 2, and then that's where they say that, okay, these are the products I will keep, and I will offer a 1-2 hours delivery. Any other products that is not fast moving, I can't, right? So this is important to understand, because this will literally point towards the skills that we have to develop, you know, as an industry going forward, right? And I give you another example, which is a more warehouse example. You know, tech application in like Flexi. I don't know whether you guys have heard of Flexi, but if you not, go into it. It's spelled as FLEXE. So this is like the Airbnb for warehousing. Okay, that means I put all the listings that's available from the various landlords onto the website, you know, very much like Airbnb, right? Take it from all the owners, all the landlords that have room to rent, house to rent, apartments to rent, blah, blah, blah. They put it on the website. And then it is like an on-demand warehousing, right? And they match the demand from a list of landlord submitted supply. Okay. Then they offer also, of course, with the permission of the landlord. Not all landlords do it, but some landlord will, right? To go on a short-term lease as well, right? They allow short-term lease as well. So there are demand for products, especially in today's world, that people bring in the product, but they don't need a permanent. They don't need a permanent storage, right? So there is demand for that short-term lease, right? So these are the tech applications that are coming in, which to a certain extent, if you look at it negatively, it is something that there's so-called cannibalizing on our business, right? Our business of brokerage, our business of matching demand with the landlords, right? So, so with that, I probably have given you a few ideas of you know, what we need going forward. And there's another trend. You look at self-storage. I think everybody understands self-storage, right? It's more for the home, you know, if you move house and all that, and you have something extra barang you put in there. And then some have gone into storage of wines and alcohol, you know, temperature control and stuff like that. But have you ever thought of ending retail with self-storage? Okay, this is a concept where, I mean, those of you know who eventually join the government, join the URA, I think you all should look at this very seriously in terms of a policy change, in terms of land use. Is that I can envisage a building. This is a warehouse building built for self-storage. Okay, it's probably a 7-story building. We cannot talk about anything less than a multi-story, right, in Singapore. So it's a 7-story building. On the ground floor is really a modular form of a showroom where anyone can take a space for 3 months, 4 months, half a year, 2 months, you know, basically to display their products, right? Selling a product is like that. Selling a product online is not perfect, right? You can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't try on it, right? So this has a market for people who are bringing in a product, you know, for a season, so you don't need a permanent space, and then allowing consumers, firstly, to buy online. But if the consumers want to come and try it because they're very careful, they want to buy something that doesn't fit what they need, you know, they take the effort to go to a warehouse location, you know, go to this floor, most likely the ground floor, and go to that shop that basically put on his website to say that if you want to try here from this period to this period, from this month to this month, where I actually have a facility for you to try on and test and, you know, and do that. And then this entrepreneur, retailer, or whatever, you know, actually have his storage in the same warehouse, right? So along with that, you will need maybe service office on the 2nd floor. You will need the logistic people, the couriers and all that will rent your space on the ground floor or the 2nd floor so that they can do that delivery, right? Servicing that entrepreneurial, I would say, retailer. Okay, so you put all these small retailers together, you actually form an ecosystem, and the ecosystem basically is a building that can serve the self-storage for businesses, that has a retail and all that, right? So, and this will make retailing very cheap compared to you having to rent a shop, rent a shop for 3 years. You are locked in for 3 years, and then you have to do the renovation that will set you back a few $100,000. And then if your business doesn't work out, you lose $500,000 quite easily, or probably $1 million quite easily to set up a retail shop. This will give the option for people to test the market, test their product, you know, with very little setup. Okay, so these are just some of the ideas that I thought would be more interesting if I share. Opportunities in the academic study and training. So what I mentioned earlier, you know, particularly for warehouse, supply chain, I think locational analytics study is so important, right? Locational analytics literally mean that it's not just the rental, it is also the labor that I can get, how much is the labor economics, the fiscal policy, the taxes and all that, you know, that actually put into optimizing the location for a company, right? And then the appreciation of data analytics, what that is. You know, a lot of people say, this is a very big word, but do we actually know how data analytics is the way forward and what are their applications, right? Workplace strategy, I think most of you have heard what it is now. It is quite prevalent in the industry, but mainly right now is for office. And I can tell you, industrial warehouse is all going towards that direction, right? Supply chain analytics, okay, this is quite in line with location analytics. Workplace strategy is all part and parcel of supply chain analytics, okay? And then finally, I would say that, like I mentioned earlier, I introduced this omni-channel real estate, right? We no longer should look at retail as retail, and warehouse as warehouse, okay, and logistics as logistics, right? It's a combination. It's made up of a different kind of real estate designed to handle the movement of goods, whether it's a movement of goods from raw material to a finished product, or whether it's a movement of goods from a finished product to the consumer. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis, for your very insightful sharing as well. Let me now introduce Donald. Donald is the CEO of Savannah REIT. Savannah REIT is a listed XGX. It's also a Sharia compliant industrial REIT. In terms of asset side, one of the largest in the world for Sharia compliant industrial REITs. Donald is also a real estate veteran, a respected industry figure, having spent more than 30 years in various senior management positions across all sectors of the market. Donald started his career at Richard Ellis in 1988. He helped to set up the industrial and investment sales department. He brought global services firm Cushman & Wakefield to Singapore and was appointed its MD in 1997. He was subsequently promoted to Cushman & Wakefield Asia Pacific Capital Markets MD in 2008. He left Cushman & Wakefield while at the helm as vice chairman. He eventually acquired a stake in UK-owned Chesterton Singapore operations in 2013, leading a team of over 100 personnel. And that was just before he joined Savannah REIT in January 2018. Donald holds a BSc in Estate Management from NUS and is a member of SISV. Donald, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. The agenda for today is really to talk a little bit about Savannah REIT. And importantly, I think I'll focus more on the navigating of COVID-19 and its effects on the REITs as well as the tenants as well. The third part is COVID-19, short-term, mid and longer-term effects on the real estate industry, in particular here in Singapore. And then the fourth part, if you've got time, I hope to do it within the 8 to the 12 minutes, to talk about repositioning of our Singapore's first business park, which is New Tech Park, which was the first business park that was built in the mid-80s. And we are now in the process of integrating commercial use, i.e. retail F&B use. And what I want to do is use this as a case study to see what we can learn from COVID-19's effect on roads, on the malls in Orchard Road during circuit breaker, during the 2 months of April and May circuit breaker. This is going back to Danny's point about the mall's performance in Orchard Road, which is highly dependent on tourists. Now we go into Savannah REIT. We are one of the largest in terms of asset size. We've got close to about 900 million in terms of total value, 18 properties altogether, about 4.1 million square feet in GFA. Net lettable area about 3.3 million, about 111 tenants altogether. Altogether, we have got about 8 warehouse and logistic properties, of which the bulk of them are all fully leased out. And we've got 4 major components, which is the high-tech industrial, the chemical warehouse, the warehouse and logistics sector, as well as the general industrial, which is across the whole of Singapore. If you look at who our key logistic tenants are, we've got the Cotton On, DHL, Vibrant, which is a third-party logistic supplier. Solex, we've got ST Logistics as well. If you look at our portfolio, in terms of gross revenue, in terms of asset types, the bulk of our revenue comes from what we call the high-tech industrial segment, which is like your New Tech Park in that sense. The other warehouse component, which is the red and the green, comprise close to about a third, about 35% of our gross revenue. In terms of diversified tenant base, we are quite well diversified. Again, if you're looking into tenants which is focused on the logistic warehouse storage component, it is the one in yellow, which is 17.8%. And the one in gray, which is about 3.9%. So we got total about 22% in terms of total rental income, yeah? Now, this is the key of it. So how has COVID-19 actually affected the tenants in our market? So I've broken into three parts. The main part about this is really to support tenants in unprecedented times like this. Tenants need help. And the law has also insisted that we, as landlord, pass on all the necessary, budget grants from IREUS. So we are going to pass on our full 30% property tax rebate to from the government to our tenants. We are also evaluating all from the Fortitude budget to ascertain eligible SMEs, which is defined as any company which is less than 100 million, and companies which in the month of April and May of 2020 on a year-to-year basis have seen a drop of at least 35% in terms of gross revenue. These are eligible tenants, and we have to give additional 1 month rental for these tenants. For the other sector of the market in retail, landlords have to give 2 months of rental waiver. We are also providing SMEs approximately about 50% of, SMEs basically made up of about 50% of our gross rental income. So they are quite substantial number in our whole portfolio. Also, the other interesting part is that 50% of our tenants are actually involved in essential services, where they continue to operate during the circuit breaker period. So in April and May, at least about 50% of our tenants continue to operate, which means we still have to provide the necessary services. We have to continue to, to provide facility management for this, for all our properties, because tenants continue to come to the building for work. Now, in terms of self-management, what has transpired is that all properties actually have this safe entry requirement. This is part of regulatory. We've actually adopted strict temperature screening to visitors, frequent sanitization, disinfection in common high touch points areas as well. And also there will be 1 or 2 times where potentially when you've got a case of a particular COVID-19, that has been declared in a particular building, sometimes there's additional costs for us to be able to have to do deep cleansing and to bring in the PPE and to clean their whole building in that sense. So there's additional cost that comes in the process in this COVID-19 period. In terms of business continuity and development, we continue to engage our tenants, our stakeholders, including our banks as well, to overcome this difficult period. Financing is usually a major issue because whenever it comes to COVID-19, it's all about liquidity. And a lot of companies fail because of they are overgeared, or in some cases, they have too much stock in their goods that they're not able to churn, to sell. So I think on our side, so far we've been quite fortunate. Our gearing is a low 30%, about 31, 32%, which is one of the lowest in the industry itself. We have done proactive engagement with our tenants, where in some cases we evaluate mutual cost savings opportunity. For instance, if there's an opportunity to buy sanitizers or masks at a bulk basis, we'll try to be able to offer these to our tenants to be able to partake on bulk discounts wherever necessary. Now, this is the impact of COVID-19 to logistic and industrial sector. I broke it down into short term and into the midterm. In terms of the short term, the impact is on supply chain disruption. This is obvious. When the lockdown transpired, when China firstly had a lockdown, a lot of supplies were stopped. So, and then after that, Malaysia had a lockdown through the MCO. So nothing could come from here except for food, vegetables and eggs and all that. But generally, I think the entire COVID-19, the awareness was really to diversify. So this keyword is really diversification. And that has in the short term started to relook into other parts where we have to bring in our supply chain. So example, I understand our prawns is coming from Saudi Arabia. Our eggs is coming from Poland. So that's part of the supply chain that we need to do in the short term. Then we had the landlord and tenant need to work together for additional support. not only tenant, I must say that not only tenants are facing the heat, it's also landlord at the same time, because especially the REITs, we do not keep cash in our balance sheet. It's a nature how we are being set up. We distribute 90%, at least 90% of our distributed income as dividends. That's how we can give, you know, high dividend from 5, 6, 7% per annum. So in that sense, whenever a particular tenant were to stop or rental payment or to defer rental payment, that will be an impact in terms of the REIT. So the way the REITs operate is slightly different from the private developer, landlord kind of modus operandi. They don't need to distribute 90% or the bulk of their earnings as dividends in that sense. But because of that, I think the government have been very proactive in supporting the REIT industry, and there's been many announcements to ensure that the REIT continue to be sustainable and resilient with the involvement of Ministry of Law, Monetary Authority of Singapore, to ensure that the certain ratios that is required by MAS are given some flexibility to be met. There's also a spike in temporary warehouse, especially in the last 2-3 months. We've seen a huge spike in temporary warehouse demand, and these are for a period of about 6 months, 12 months for a size of about 50,000-100,000 square feet, mainly fueled by e-commerce. People scrambling to fill out the orders and to bring goods into Singapore, and healthcare centers, companies who are doing test kits, COVID-19 test kits, those doing production of masks are starting to look for premises. And we've been involved in many of these search process. And I must say that one of our property, we have converted 200,000 square feet purely into a healthcare medical hub to facilitate this ongoing. At the same time, we've increased our operational costs in terms of cleaning, sanitizing, providing thermal equipment, manpower as well. Of course, income, cash flows issues are mainly the main crux of it. It is all about liquidity, as I mentioned. Now, in the longer term, where we feel the changes will be, I think there will be a reposition of supply chain. So you definitely now have to start looking into diversification. Look elsewhere beyond your typical convenient borders in that sense. The second part is really strategizing, re-strategize the last mile delivery functions. We're now beginning to get tenants who are beginning to want to have warehouse space where they can drive in vans, their delivery, pretty much like a DHL kind of model where they come in, collect and move out of the premises. So the last mile delivery functions is now becoming more prominent, especially in the warehouse sector itself. Digitalization and automation is definitely here to stay. It has already exploded in terms of the usage. So moving forward is all about digital, and virtual technology. There's also a focus on local sustainability. What I meant here is that when we started off, a lot of our food sources were hindered. So now we're beginning to look at the government starting to encourage everybody to start growing their vegetables. Production of masks have now started to be ongoing right now. I think Razer have already started their made in Singapore masks, when at the beginning of COVID, there was a shortage of masks in Singapore. And even construction companies, real estate development companies are now starting to look into buying their own prefabrication construction plants in Singapore. They own prefab construction plants in Johor or in China, but because of the lockdown, all of a sudden now they are not able to get their prefab materials into Singapore. So there is a need to have a local sustainability source. So they are going ahead to buy their own prefab plant. One of them is, I think, Chip Eng Seng, who just announced recently of buying a prefab plant in Singapore in Tuas. Decentralization is going to be the key, i.e. is going to be away from high-risk density pandemic area. So it is high-risk area like CBD, where people conglomerate, people meet. I think now there is a trend for companies wanting to move some of the backroom operations into better located but cheaper locations near to strategic areas for business continuity basis as well. So you got team A in the CBD maybe, but team B is located maybe in business parks. Tenant in pandemic resistant sectors are sought after. So medical healthcare, pharma, biomedical, digital, telecommunication firms are now sought after, because when these tenants, you can get them in in the buildings, you find that even there's going to be, touch wood, a lockdown part 2, you will know that these tenants will continue to thrive. They will continue to be essential services. So a lot of times, then, whenever you have got essential services in your buildings, I think you are assured that at least these tenants will do well. Lockdown or not lockdown, pandemic or not. So now the question here is, of course, this is more of a question. Valuation methodology of properties. It is right now, it's all about location, 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 but it is really about location, location, location. But is it also about the number of essential services firms in a building? In the past, you value a building based on the number of finance company, banks, or how many listed companies that there is. But during COVID-19, you realize that some of these companies are not going to are closed. So potentially they might not do well as well. So as a result, now the essential services firms are the ones that's going to pick up the bill and pay rental. Is there going to be a higher weightage given when you do a valuation of property for buildings where there is a higher number of essential firms? That's the question that I'm just posing in the market. Now this is my second part of it, which I think while Dennis was talking about industrial logistic and a bit about retail, Danny Yeo was talking more about the retail. I'm going to put these two together, and I'm going to put it into a case study for my new tech park. And I'm going to ask some questions as well later on, especially to Danny. Yeah? Now, New Tech Park is the first business park that came into the market in the 80s. Now, this was built by a UK developer who brought their business park in Singapore. At that time, in 86, there was no such thing as a business park zoning. It is set up in the heart of Lorong Chuan, right in front of the Lorong Chuan MRT, in the heart of residential. It's got a business, it's got a park here, and they got a lot of schools. There are Australian schools here. So if you look at it here, the beige is all residential, and the light green is all education, schools. We have in total about 3,000 office workers here, mostly MNCs who uses New Tech Park as their regional HQ. We've got about roughly within 1 km, about 40,000 population, and I've got 160,000 population based within 2 km. Schools, I've got close to about 12,000 people. And I've got an auditorium over here on weekends being used as church. Church now not operational, but the intention is to create a MICE convention on weekdays and a church event to provide weekend footfall traffic. So this is a mall, and I'll go back to Danny's point where he mentioned that small malls are going to be quite tough to survive. I've got a small mall over here. I'm creating a retail within a business park industrial, and I've got only about 44,000 square feet. So the problem here is that I want to make sure that it comes, touch wood, if there's going to be a COVID-19 pandemic that comes in Singapore, I want to make sure this mall survive, at least during the lockdown period. So if you look at this, I have actually, what I've done is that in the lockdown period, I've actually gone round to Orchard Road. Every day, I've gone down to see between 5 to about 7 o'clock. I just go through all the malls to see what transpired in Orchard Road malls. And I see how they have performed and how they have actually opened for business during this period. So the malls that I've actually evaluated from the period from April 7 to about end of May was Paragon, Cine Leisure, Ngee Ann City, Orchard Central, Mandarin Gallery, Shaw House, Shaw Center. We've got Scott Square, 111 Somerset, Mandarin Gallery, Wisma Atria, and Ion. So the key observation, this is just more personal. It's not on a company basis. I'm not talking here as a consultant, but on a personal basis. My first impression when the lockdown transpired, most malls shut it down, regardless to whether there are tenants inside. So if you look at malls facing Orchard Road, Wisma Atria, Main Road malls, all closed down. And they redirected traffic towards the back, which is towards the Orchard Boulevard side. And they centralized in one location. It's obviously cost cost control, containment, and also to control traffic and all that. ION, the most beautiful of its main entrance is closed, and you've got to find the entrance through basement leading towards the MRT. So really the key point over here is that malls should be open in times of pandemic. The way I see it, at least main entrance should be open. If not, there is an impression that there's going to be that the mall is not inviting enough, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm learning all this to see how I can redesign and what are the good points that I can do for my NTP, for my new tech park. The other component here is that main entrance lobby should be bright lighted and inviting. Now, it's to show that it is open for business. So this was taken in one of the CB period for Ngee City. It was dark. It is not inviting, unfortunately. But I still went there to see how the traffic is. And if you look below, if you look at this below here, the second point, of course, is that supermarket brings in the crowd, but food court may not be a necessary guarantee. So the one below here is really Paragon. Paragon did very, very well. In fact, I spoke to Susan Ling from SPH REIT. She says her mall during lockdown did much better than previous days, prior to the lockdown period. Interesting. Food Opera, which is in ION, was closed during the lockdown period, yeah, because they didn't have a supermarket. And even the thoroughfare that goes from the MRT into the tanks, the busy underpass of tanks and ION was quiet. And this, the last photograph below is really the Wisma Atreus 4th floor food court, which was very quiet, unfortunately. Mainly because it's located on the upper floor, and also because, remember, the entrance of the mall was located at the back, and there was no entrance from the front, unfortunately. So it gives the impression that the mall was closed, unfortunately. Now, ground floor F&B with now it's important to have actually F&B ground floor visibility to the main road. This is COVID period. Is important to have that. So because your ground floor creates that visibility for people who drive, for people who jog, who walk, and they just want to go and get something fast and get out. I think the ground floor shops tend to do much better if you have F&B. So if you look at this component here, the upper floor, the basements of malls that like Neon, for instance, to go into the cold storage, you have to go 2 levels or 3 levels of basement. I think that alone, and it through a very dark alley, I think that doesn't look quite convenient for people. So you need to make it, I think this could potentially be one of the scenario that if we are re-looking into putting tenant mix for malls, if you want to survive the pandemic, it's good to have F&B to helm and to front the main road. Yeah, if you put high street brands, unfortunately, when it comes to pandemic, it's going to be closed, and people will think the mall is closed, unfortunately. The other part is that cluster groups of F&B together to create a buzz and marketplace. So Paragon basement have done excellent. They are a large mall, but because the supermarket and all the other retail F&Bs were open, it create like business as usual. So I think if you look at one of the best performing malls during the 2 months of lockdown, Paragon scored very highly. And so did 111 Somerset, mainly because they have a ground floor positioning with dual entrances. Larger malls like Ngee City didn't fare quite well. I mean, this is more on my personal. If you look at the photograph below here, this is the atrium on basement 3, which looks very quiet. This is the walkway in Takashimaya for Crystal Jade. So the important thing is that car park income is not important during pandemic period. A lot of malls only a few malls gave free car park, hourly car parks. CapitaLand, 111, Paragon, Orchard Central. This, as a result, had less visitations for delivery riders, and especially cab drivers who also doubled as delivery riders did not want to patronize malls to pick up, unfortunately. So do shoppers as well. Malls must step up with promos during pandemic. That's my feel, because like 111 have done very well, provide 1-for-1 dining and vouchers for receipts and all that. So again, like I said, future tenant mix planning, I think to survive any COVID, you need to prioritize F&B on the ground floor. So if you look at the bottom, I actually gave Paragon 10 out of 10, 111 Somerset 10 out of 10, Orchard Central 7 out of 10 because they got a Don Donkey over there, Center Point 7 out of 10. But those that did very not so well were your Ion, Wisma Atria, Cine Leisure, Mandarin Gallery was dark. This place was not so conducive at all. So again, contrary to the fact, pre-COVID, the top 3 malls everybody wants to go is Nian, it's always the Paragon, it's always the Ion. So last slide, what I'm going to do, learning from all this, our mall over here on the ground floor will all be F&B. It will be al fresco, it will be lighted up, and we will create a supermarket inside. There will be a food court to make sure that if anything happens, it will be lighted up to make sure we're open for business. We have got signage outside here to ensure that, to further reinforce that the mall has these tenants that are operating in that sense. That's it. Joseph, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Donald, for your case studies and for your sharing as well. I do want to address the question that have been put up. Do you still think that we need malls in Orchard Road, given the change in shopping patterns, Danny?
I think the Orchard Market is quite different from the rest because Orchard Market is a place where it's almost like a national center kind of thing where all the Singaporeans will go there and congregate for certain high-end products. We all know that very often when you go out on holidays, people shop. So at this point in time, I think unless and until the whole travel industry is able to bring itself back, and if our tourist number are able to continue to grow, at this present moment, I think we may have got to put a hold. So even along Orchard Road, if you take a look, not all the malls are performing well, and there is quite obvious which one are those doing well, which one are not. So there are a lot of work to be done. So if you look at the mall that are doing well, honestly, there are not that many. So although on surface it looks as if the number is very big in terms of floor space, but actually it is not that big. So I qualify to say that as it is, no. If we are able to bring ourselves back, yes.
Thank you, Danny. Dennis, you have questions for you. This is from Tiffany. As e-commerce has driven the demand for logistics services, how has this impacted the market for real estate infrastructure and related services for last mile delivery? And the other one, is there added changes in demand for sorting pop-up stores?
There will be changes needed, but because if you talk about in the Singapore's context, you know, our infrastructure in terms of transportation and all that is quite it's quite good in a sense, right? But there will be minor tweaks with regards to the sort of vehicle you use for delivery. You know, of course, traditionally using the vans and all that may not work if you have to go to many places and then your roads are not big enough. In Singapore's context, it is relatively simple because we have a proper good infrastructure. But then if you extend the thinking towards the less mature market, maybe even Indonesia and all that, I think the vehicle, the mode of transport for the delivery has to be taken into consideration. And then if you start to look forward into the future, where we talk about autonomous vehicle, this is where you know, autonomous vehicle may do part of the work, and then there's probably a less need for delivery drivers and all, right? And if you look at even in China, right, now we talk about pop station and all that, where you can go to the place to collect. Even in China, in the design of condominiums and houses and all that in a community, they actually have delivery boxes, okay, and they use high tech. They don't even need to give you a SMS or whatever, right? They send you a QR code and then you can retrieve your parcel. In fact, in Singapore, there are also a few private, other than the pop station, which the government is starting this initiative, there are actually also a few private providers of these delivery boxes. Yeah. When I talk about infrastructure, I'm not just talking about the roads, I'm also talking about how is delivered, how is deposited, and how is it collected. So technology have come to the extent where you literally can do it with your phone. and that to a certain extent also impact our real estate, the property design, whether it's in the office or whether it's at home.
Thanks, Dennis. All right, Donald, there are some questions for you as well.
From Ho Kwan Rong,
Yes.
how do you quantitatively assess the impact of COVID on companies' REIT? Okay, so the most important is we are in the business of renting space and collecting rental from the tenant and distribute to our unit holders. So the important thing is we must be able to collect rental. So if you look in the last April, May, we have actually collected of close to more than 90%. Tenants have paid 90% of their April and May rental. So that's good news. So I think if that continue to be the trend moving forward, I think ourselves and most REITs, I think, have also reported the same numbers. We should be all right. So it's about rental collection in that sense. If I can move to the next question from Celeste, why did Paragon did better where supermarkets on the basement and not visible? Is it the bright lights and all that? Bright lights is one thing. Importantly is that Paragon, unlike, let's say, Ngee Ann City, which is very long, it has a central focus where the main front, as well as where the taxi station is, it conglomerates one level down to where the supermarket and where all the food F&Bs are located. So it's easy access. Like, let's say Ngee Ann City, where you got to go deep inside and you got to go 2-3 levels of basements, and it's far away in terms of location of where the stores are located. I think there's one more question down. Mr. Han, what's your thought about long-term when you decide to put F&B over luxury? Okay, I'm just learning to see what needs to be done in a small mall, where I think Danny mentioned small mall got problem now. I know you won't be able to do all kinds of tenant mix, so you got to decide. And I think what we've decided for New Tech Park Retail Mall, which we call NTP Plus, is to increase the number of F&B, because people need to eat. You can buy from your omni-channel, you can buy your goods from Lazada. You cannot have that dining experience, unfortunately. And even we've got a dining experience, if in COVID-19 where it's being banned, you cannot have dining, you can still deliver. So the mall that we're creating in NTP Plus is really focused on F&B, so that if there's going to be touch with another lockdown, we know the tenants can survive, can continue to operate. And we've created a friendly delivery platform for riders to be able to facilitate a quick come and a quick go to facilitate their delivery process. So that, I hope, answers everything.
It's not correct to say that all malls that are small will not be able to make it, because I think it's a very generous statement given the time. I would say that those malls, they are largely 100,000 to 200,000 and not big, not small. And then either they are being squeezed in between or squeezed by a very big mall, or they are in a location that are not quite near the transportation hub. I think that is where they got real big problem, because it's that size is not that small, not that big for Singapore standard. But those malls that are largely 50,000 and below, and if you are obviously sandwiched near to the big boys, you could be in trouble unless you're very niche. Otherwise, these are the malls that are serving the local community. So long as the local community has a needs, that is not a major issue. So I think that is a point I would say it, because in where you are quite small. But the question is that after looking at everything, are you in a community where there is a need for it? That's all.
Thank you very much. I would like to end by inviting each of the panelists to just share in a minute or so, in the spirit of nurturing young leaders. If you have some tips or advice to our students who are going to graduate or graduating in this tough period. I think we graduated for Dennis and Donna, we also graduated in 1988 also. It was after quite a bad market as well, right? So anyway, I would like to invite, starting with Donald, your 1 minute sharing tips to the graduating cohort.
Don't be choosy. When I started my first job in Richard Ellis, I wasn't choosing at all. I wasn't negotiating. I think I got a very, very low pay in that time. But importantly is really go for the experience, especially in COVID-19 period right now. It's hard to get an offering. And if you get any offering with a decent amount, just take it. Yeah. At the end of the day, some jobs will lead you somewhere ultimately.
How about Dennis?
Well, okay, I think first you all must recognize actually the real estate study is very valuable. Okay, it's very valuable because you end up having a CA license, CA salesperson license, which everybody else outside real estate study in NUS will not be able to get. Okay, so that is very valuable because that allows you to trade, allows you to do sales and leasing and all that. And even for developers and REITs and all that who will need to have this license and need to hire people with this license in order to do their leasing, their lease negotiation and all that. Okay, so it's a very valuable license. So, and it's a very good course.
How about Danny?
Okay, I just put 2 points here. I do agree with Dennis. Actually, I have always been asking why is it so that a lot of young kids bypass real estate course, because it's a very good foundation and it puts you into a lot of in a position to do a lot of things. But at the end of the day, I tell you this: whichever education you go to, whichever course you go to, ultimately it's you and you and you. Now, so the second point I'm trying to put on here is that don't worry about your first year. Yes, market coming good and bad, but the first 5 years to 7 years of your graduation would be a very key foundation time. Don't worry about earning another just about $300-500 less compared to what. Don't worry about that, because your propensity to earn will grow exponentially as you get into enough experience. You know who you are, you know what you're doing, and you know how the market operates, and you know how to position yourself. I think that is where you really get your real worth. So first 3-5 years, just learn, and do your best.
I give you my example because I mentioned earlier, right? Danny was my first boss. You know, when I graduated, my colleagues and Uy and Joseph, I call him Uy, you know, they go to the big IPCs or they stay back NUS, get a reasonable pay, or they go to HDB and all that. I ended up with Danny. That time Danny was its own firm, a very small firm. And I think Danny, you remember what you pay me, right? It was $500. $500 a month, of course with commission.
Yeah.
But those few years were probably very I learned a lot. That I think is a good story. $500.
Yeah.
My peers was earning $1,800, I think, or $2,000 at least.
But I must comment that Dennis is a very fast learner. So everyone must remember, I say that whatever you get is what you get, but who you are and how you position yourself and how you pick up, I think matters. So have a good attitude and be hardworking. You won't go wrong after some years.
All right. Yeah. Dennis actually asked a question that I wanted to ask as well. You know, Dennis, was it planned or by accident that you went into industrial and logistics? Because it's not the most glamorous sector years back, right? Compared to commercial.
Okay, this is where I, you know, when you start with a small firm, the advantage of starting with a small firm is that, you know, you get to learn all the industry, right? Because you go to the big firm, they say, okay, you do office, you do industrial, you do cap markets. You know, but when you start with a small firm, you do industrial leasing, you do warehouse leasing, you may do a shop sale, you may go and look for a brand, you know, to look out shops for them or whatever. You do some investment sales, as you call it, but you know, small stuff, and then you get to do across everything. So when Knight Frank asked me, you know, to join them, I literally say, you know, what do you want me to specialize in, right? Because Knight Frank is a relatively big firm. Of course, they want to specialize you. They're not going to let you do everything and anything. So they say industrial. So I say, look at it. Yeah, it's okay. I can try that. And then from there, I never look back.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate all your taking time off to come for this session. I think the students have benefited a lot, to the panelists as well.